Bill Flynn. He wrote a best-selling book, Further Faster. He's multi-certified business growth coach. Before that, he was an executive at 10 startups for over 25 years. Bill, welcome to the SuccessGrid podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great, Hussein. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So, Bill, first let me ask you, I wanted to tell us a little more about yourself, but I heard that you actually pitched Steve Jobs. Is that true, or is it something that was just written
No, I
somewhere?
did. Yeah. I met him when he was at Next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was doing speech recognition at the time, working for a company called Dragon Systems, which eventually sort of influenced Siri, which we're all very familiar with. I was trying to get a number of the hardware manufacturers up and down the California coast, because there were tons of them in the 90s, to consider using speech recognition. So I went to Next, and I was actually just meeting with product managers, and one of them said, "Oh, hang on, Steve's gonna try to make the meeting," and I had no idea what they were talking about.
Okay.
I didn't ever expect to meet him. And then, he showed up, and he was there for about 20 minutes, and I gave him a demonstration. He asked a bunch of questions. He said, "Okay, thanks." And off he went.
And what happened after that?
So nothing happened with us, but I think, he just wanted to see what the level of the technology was at that point.
Okay. So maybe this is how Steve Jobs got the companies to grow faster and big. Maybe he got a lot of ideas from different people and then combined them together and see what's going on in the minds of other people.
Yeah, he definitely had the reputation of being very curious and wanted to really pull in lots of information. And yes, and from a neuroscience perspective, that's an excellent way to come up with new ideas, right? You have all these things. You don't know if you'll ever use them. One of the things that was most popular with him was his calligraphy. He understood calligraphy, so that's why fonts were really important to him. And he did a lot of. Now fonts are just sort of regular, but at the time, it was like there were like 2 fonts, and he wanted a bunch of different ones and stuff. So
I think there was a scene in the movie Jobs that we were talking about this kind of things, right?
Yeah, it was in the book by Isaacson as well. So,
yeah, cool, awesome. So tell us a little bit more about you, your story. Where were you 20 years ago, and where are you now?
Yeah, so I sort of got lucky early on in my 20s. I had a really helpful and gracious family member who sort of took me under his wing and actually helped me to get my first job. And that wasn't really a startup, but it was a relatively new company in high tech, and I kind of liked it. I actually went in as a salesperson, which a lot of people go into when they don't have any skills. And from there, I got into the internet about 1995, so pretty early on, right when the World Wide Web was a thing. Cool. And really loved that whole startup, right start from the beginning kind of thing, and really it just kind of got my juices flowing, if you will. And so I stuck with that. I actually got connected to a bunch of really great people, and there were like 3 or 4 of us, and we actually did four together, and we did really well. We were actually 3 for 4, which was kind of cool. And I ended up being 5 for 6 in my first 6 startups. Last 4, not so much. But along the way, I got a chance to get a taste of what I do now, which is sort of coaching. I did it within the company, and it was more of a necessity than anything. I ran into a whole bunch of trouble when I took over as a GM of an organization, and I can tell that story later if you want.
Yeah, sure.
And happened to need help from other people because I didn't know all the answers. I needed help. So, I sort of said to the team, "Hey, I kind of think that this would be a good place for us to end up. Let's discuss, debate, and decide on that. And then once we do, then each of us needs to sort of draw a roadmap of where we are in our department or division or whatever, and get us to there." And that worked out really well. And that's sort of my first taste of coaching. That was about over 10 years ago now, probably 13, 14 years ago.
Good.
And then about 5 years ago, I became a coach, and that was sort of the impetus. I wanted to do that again. I wanted to help people really understand how to do things, not tell them what to do, but sort of teach them the framework and let them decide on what to do. So
yeah, exactly. So you mentioned like you started in sales. What do you think of sales? Because it's basically selling more stuff, whatever it is. This is what makes a company grow, I think, because there is money coming in, right? And then you transform into coaching, right? So why did you transform from this kind of things exactly to personal coaching, when we know, like, for example, coaching, you help maybe you help fewer people, right? This is what happens when you do coaching.
Yeah, I have a handful of clients. I teach the entire team. I don't just teach one individual. I don't work with one individual. But you asked a really interesting question about sales, and I've thought a lot about sales in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And there's something called the growth paradox. And I love this saying by Edward Abbey, which is growth for growth's sake is the ideology of a cancer cell. So just trying to get revenue into your business is not a good idea, because if the revenue isn't profitable and you're not actually adding cash to your balance sheet and to the bank account, you can be $100 million company, but if it costs you $100 million to run it, then you've actually employed a bunch of people, but you're not really building a business. And as soon as something bad happens,
there's no profit. What's the point?
Yeah. So if you want to grow, and you want to grow in a healthy and thriving way, it's actually about cash. It's about, how do I generate cash and put it into my business and make sure that I have money put aside for the inevitable bad thing that's going to happen, right? We're 21 years into this century. We've already had 3 bad things happen, right? We've had 9/11 happen in the US, and it certainly affected the world. We had the 2008 financial crisis, which affected most of the world. And we had COVID, which affected everyone.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses went out of business because they weren't ready. They were too optimistic, and they focused on revenue. They went too wide. And then when things got bad, they didn't have enough money in the bank to last. Now, COVID is hard to predict, but you can certainly put yourself in a better position than they did today. So I think so that's what I sort of think about sales. From my coaching perspective, my goal is to touch 1 million lives by the time I'm done. I'm at about 35,000 right now.
Okay.
I got a long way to go. I don't have to reach 1 million, but I certainly
you will reach that. No problem.
Yeah. So the coaching won't get me there. It'll have to be the books or speaking or some other way that I can do it. And I'm constantly looking for ways to do that as well. So that's my goal.
It's awesome. So you mentioned like certain things that happened, like, for example, lastly now COVID, right? And you talked about the cash. I actually studied accounting in university.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there are a lot of sheets, like the balance sheet, the income statement, and there is the cash flow statement. The only statement I liked actually studying and doing is the cash flow statement, because actually it made sense to me, because at the end of it, is the company making negative or positive? This is where I can see the things that actually happens. And the income statement, I was interested at the final number, the net profit or the net loss. This is why this is the only thing I liked about accounting, because eventually this is what I want to do. I want to look at the number at the end of the list and see that I am making a positive return on the investment or the business or whatever it is. Yes. So cool concept. They say cash is king, so I think cash is king, right?
Yeah, cash is king in most instances. I think if you're looking to grow a startup and trying to move fast, cash isn't necessarily king yet, because you're still trying to figure it out and you're trying to figure out your business model, or you're trying to grow super fast because you got to do that. But yes, if you want to grow a healthy and thriving business over the long term, cash is important. And I think cash is more important than profit, because as you know, as an accountant, you can lie to yourself on profit, right? You can pay yourself less money. You can do funky things with other parts of the balance sheet or the P&L and make it look like you have a profit. But when it comes down to it, I always say you should act as if you want to sell your company to someone, and you want to get the highest multiple for your company.
Yes.
And if they come in and say, well, you're only paying yourself $50,000 a year and you should be paying $250,000 a year, they're going to take that right off of the value of your company. And if you do that with other people as well, they're going to say, well, your company isn't actually worth what you think it's worth, because you are overvaluing your business. And they don't want to buy that. They want to buy, they know they're going to have to fix it, so they're going to undervalue it as much as they can. So you got to be careful with that as well, with profit, I think.
So through your career, what struggles did you have yourself, or did you see businesses go through?
So a lot of what we just talked about. So for myself, I wasn't a great manager when or leader when I first started out. I was taught what most of us are taught, which is, you have to tell people what to do and you have to know all the answers and all these things. And I always wondered why I was so stressed out. It was because there's no way in the world I'm going to know all the answers. I don't, I mean, I'm relatively good at sales, but I'm certainly don't know all the answers there. I'm relatively good at marketing, don't know all the answers there. I have no background in finance. I'm technically adept, but, and I wrote code when I was in college, but, I'm not nearly as technically astute as people that would be working for me. So all these things that you have to really understand, I didn't get because I wasn't really taught that. And I think that starts from schooling, not just in business.
Yeah.
And what I found most businesses do is so I've been studying sort of business success and business failure for a while. And what I've found is that most businesses die of indigestion, not of starvation. They try to do too many things and they spread themselves too thin. Again, sort of chasing that revenue, as you said before, right? We need to bring in more revenue because then that makes us a healthy, we want to be a $100 million business or a $50 million business. And again, it doesn't matter in the end if you really want to build a healthy and thriving business. If you want to flip your company really fast and people are going to pay you a multiple of revenue, then go for it. But that's pretty rare, especially these days.
These days, it's as much it is easy, for example, to someone to start, for example, online nowadays, right? But at the same time, forget competition. Let's put the competition aside. But a lot social media platforms, for example, like you mentioned, going everywhere at once, social media distraction in itself, a lot of things to do. So when you do that, me myself now, I'm having this problem also, because like you have these like 5-10 social media platforms, which one you should focus on more, which one that actually brings, let's say, the thing that you want, the revenue or the goal that you put to your company. So these kind of things are like putting you all off the grid and keep you on a circle that sometimes doesn't stop.
I agree. So I think you're hitting a really good point, which is what I found is most businesses try to solve the problem from the middle.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
So the social media channels, the messaging, all that kind of stuff is something that stems from something further downstream, further upstream, actually, right? Which is you really have to understand why your customers buy from you. What problem are you solving? Are you solving it in a way that is unique to them and they certainly value? There are, we talked about Steve Jobs, so we might have to use that as an example because most people know who Apple is anyway around the world. And when Steve Jobs first came in, he wasn't as good a leader as he was the second time he came in.
You mean when he quit and came back? So he became.
Yeah, he didn't quit. He got ousted, but yeah.
Okay.
Okay. But so the second time when he came in and sort of resurrected Apple, and he learned a bunch of things, and he learned that you really have to understand what your customers want. And I tell a story. I don't know if it's true, but it's a really good story, right? So Steve Jobs. So the first thing that came out was iTunes, but the first thing that we really understand is iPod. The iPod. That was the first, other than the Mac stuff that was already there. The iPod was the next big thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it actually was, because at that time I was using the Walkman, the one that you put the cassette in, or the CD, and I used to go running with it, and it was like sometimes jams and the song cuts off.
Exactly, right?
So when that thing happened, it was a great thing to.
Right, but in order to find that out, he didn't go and say, he didn't ask you or someone like you to say, how can I make a better Walkman for you? He didn't say that because we as consumers aren't really good at giving the answer. We will give an answer, but it's not a good answer, right? Because we're only working from what we know. So he went to people and he said, why do you have that? Why do you use your Walkman? And you'd say, oh, well, I like it because I like to have my music with me and I have certain songs. And when I'm running, I want certain songs to keep my pace or whatever, right? So I want to be able to control, whatever your reasons were. Say, great. So where is that Walkman letting you down? And you already said, well, it skips. I have to carry all these CDs around with me and I really only like 2 or 3 songs on them, it's kind of heavy and bulky, and so when I'm running, it sort of maybe hits my hip or it feels weird, whatever those things were.
Yeah.
And he might ask you something like, okay, so about how many songs do you think you'd love to have with you at any given time, right? And he said, what would you like it to be? And you probably said, well, I want it to fit in my pocket. So he went to Idea Labs, which really designed the iPod. I think it's Idea Labs. No, it's IDEO. It was some design firm, which starts with an I, and I can't remember what it is now. Yeah. And he said, I want you to build me an MP3 player that is 1,000 songs that fits in someone's pocket. I want a super simple design, right? Because Apple's sort of mantra is amazingly simple and simply amazing, right? That's what they build. And that's what they made, because he understood why people were using, what they hired the Walkman to do for them, but it was failing in certain areas. That's why the iPod took off. And that's why he was so good, I think so good at coming up with new ideas. He understood how to pull out from someone something they didn't even know that they wanted.
He knew how to extract the information that they wanted without knowing what they exactly wanted, and interpret it into something that they wanted actually to buy.
Yeah, so, and I think extract. Okay, so extract is an excellent word, Hussein. I think he was an excellent interrogator. He wasn't an interviewer. He was an interrogator. He was like, tell me more, and he was pulling stuff out, and people didn't even know they were thinking it. So I think that was an excellent word, extract. Definitely.
This is why he's a visionary. Yeah, I guess. Well, tell us a little about your book, because in your book, Further, Faster, it's about growing faster. So how does it work to grow faster in a company?
So what I found is, I've looked at a bunch of leaders, and it's really leaders, not companies. I found that really make the difference. And what I found was that the great leaders that built companies or turned around companies in a certain way, and built them for success for the future, if someone were to keep doing it, did a few things really well. And they did the same exact things really well, which I thought was fascinating, right? And that turned out to be, for me, what I found was that team was the most important thing, that performance is a team sport. You can't rely on one individual or a couple of people to really build an enduring company. And most people do that. And building, attracting, crafting, and growing a great team is a skill. It's a skill we do not teach, but it is a skill that we need to teach. And so I put a bunch of stuff in there. And none of this is from me. This is from like Amy Edmondson and Marcus Buckingham and Simon Sinek and all these people who are thinking about these things. I sort of put my own little twist on it. But the data shows, the science shows that if you really understand teams, then you'll have a chance of creating a better company. The next thing is that strategy and execution are not two separate things. They are two sides of the same coin. I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of CEOs through some of my workshops and things that I've done over the years. And I would ask them the same questions over and over again. And I would say, sort of, what's your biggest barrier to growth? And often I would get what I would consider an operations problem or an execution problem. We're not doing the right things. We're not doing them well. We're not doing them on time, whatever. And I said, so that's sort of execution. And so, I was like, my next question is, so what are you executing on? Right. And I sort of get they sort of cock their head to the side. Like, what do you mean by that? And eventually they'd say something like, well, we're executing the plan. And I would say, okay, how did you come up with the plan?
Exactly. Okay. Right? Because if you have I assume if you have the plan, you will execute it 100% as it is. This is what I assume. Yeah.
Hopefully, right? And not always, but hopefully. And I'm trying to get them to strategy, right? Is the strategy informs the plan, which informs what you execute. And I'd say, okay, so let me ask you this. If I go into your Monday morning, I go into your office and I sit with you and your team at their senior staff meeting, right? Because most companies have their senior staff meeting on Monday mornings, right? Or Friday afternoons. And I go in and say, I get to ask them one question. The question is, make one request, which is, would each of you please write down in your own words, what is our current company strategy? And then I have them write that down individually and then read it out loud.
It's not going to be the same from each one, no.
Exactly.
I am sure 100% it's not gonna be the same.
Exactly.
Each one has their own. Ask any employee in any business, or especially corporates, big corporation, they are going to answer you and give you a different answer. It's not gonna be.
But not every company. Like, so if you go to Southwest Airlines here in the United States and you ask, supposedly, if you ask any full-time employee, what is our strategy? They all know it. They know that it's wheels up. If you go to IKEA and ask people what their strategy is, they know that it's flat packed furniture, right? So your job as the leader of everything, is to get everyone literally and figuratively on the same page.
Yeah, exactly.
Team leaders should be saying the same. I mean, they may use different words, but the essence should be the same. So I say, okay, so you have this execution problem. Maybe they're executing really, really well on their version of the strategy. And your job is to get them all on the same page. So they're executing really well on the whole strategy. That's really going to differentiate you in the marketplace and sort of build a moat around your company.
So this is, this is like building a company culture. Each company should have their own culture and inform or get their employees get certain training, let's say, to have this culture about the company and about the business and about its operation.
Yeah, it's training, but it's also living it every day, right? And reinforcing it every day. There's a great story that I don't know if it's true, but again, a great story is that someone, in the last 10 years or so, someone at Southwest said, hey, we need to offer some sort of healthier options as for people to eat on the plane, right? Because people are getting into organic and vegetarianism and all that kind of stuff. And they said, oh, we need to have sort of, I think it was like a chicken Waldorf salad. We want to offer a chicken Waldorf salad. That seems to be popular across, whatever. And so they said, great. So they introduced it to the company and they said, okay, does it get the planes in the air any faster? That's their strategy, right? Their strategy is wheels up. We need to get the wheels up. And when they said, so people would be happier on the plane when they do it, but it could stall takeoff. Why? Because what if the chicken Waldorf salads are late? What if the refrigeration breaks? All of these things that would have to go. They say, so we're not risking it. We're passing out salt and sweets, in packages, Oreo cookies and pretzels in a basket because, they don't go bad and they're not going to stall the plane leaving it. So that's the culture you talk about. That's the whole thing. They like.
I don't think someone who wants to travel now, is it a long travel hours or short ones? The main thing for me is to actually arrive. I don't mind not eating the whole trip if it's even 24 hours. I just want to arrive. It's not. I wouldn't really think that much about eating on a plane. I don't know.
Some do, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Of course, because
so you would fly a certain airline, right? So you wouldn't necessarily fly Emirates or Singapore Air or that's sort of this luxury elite thing. But there are some people who love that, and so that's great for them, and they can afford it, and that's cool. But I'm more like you. I'm more just get me there. I'll just bring my own food. I generally.
I'm just saying. But at the end of the day, we are human. Yes, we get hungry. We get thirsty. We get whatever. But I mean, the idea of the Southwest Airlines business model is great. Their focus is to, like you mentioned, is to go up in the air as fast as possible.
Yep.
Yeah. No delays.
Exactly. So there's one more thing. So it's cash, which we already talked about in great depth. But so there are three things in my book. There's performance as a team sport. You must understand that your business is one big cohesive system that goes up to your vision and down to your tactics. And then lastly is that cash should be your primary financial growth metric if you're going to grow a healthy and thriving company. And what I mean by that is, so we talked about strategy and a plan. I'm going to say, okay, so put together your plan that helps your strategy, helps differentiate you from someone else. What do you need to put in your business that you don't have today? How much will that cost? Figure out how much that costs, then build your plan to generate the cash or borrow it, whatever you want to do, to make that come true. There's a great story that's in a book called American Icon. When Alan Mulally came in from Boeing into Ford, and he turned around Ford in 2006 through 2014. Again, in the middle of 2008 recession, he turned around a car company, which is amazing. He had four things that he said that he needed to convince the board of to make this thing happen. And I'm not going to know them exactly, but one was we have to have an evolving product mix that creates offerings that our customers want and value is really important. He said we need to execute profitably on that plan. We are one team, right? He said it was all about the team. And then lastly, he said, we need the money to pay for this. He asked for $23 billion from the government and from mostly from investors and such from the market. And he turned Ford around in 8 years. He took Ford, which lost $17 billion the year he took it over, 2006. He took it over at the end of 2006. They lost $17 billion that year.
Wow.
To in 2015, they were for a short time the #1 car company in the world again. They surpassed Toyota.
Wow.
And they did that with fewer cars. They got rid of Jaguar, they got rid of Volvo. So it wasn't about, again, volume, right? And lots of spreading across things.
Yeah.
It was focusing really tightly on what they do really well. They sold a lot more Tauruses than they did before, which was really the big car seller for them, and trucks and SUVs as well.
Yeah. Cool.
So
yeah, this is maybe like it's far, but maybe like the Lamborghini model of business. They manufacture a little number of cars, but they assume they are, I don't know. I don't know now if they are profitable or not, but they are in business still. So
they still are. Yeah, Ferrari's the same way. They make very few cars, but they it costs you $100,000 to buy one or $300,000 to buy one.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need that many.
No.
Elon Musk did the same thing with Tesla, right? He built a $70,000 car, and he took pre-orders and actually funded the company. So he
with the pre-orders, he funded the business with the pre-orders.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, mostly because most of his money went into SpaceX.
Yeah, and Bitcoin now. He's into Bitcoin, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
So, is there a science to business success?
Totally. Yeah. There are proven ways to do things that, and nothing's perfect, et cetera. But, as I have said it many times, is we definitely ignored at our peril the science behind business, and we go with conventional wisdom more often. We think that employees need feedback, and we don't need feedback. We need to grow. We need to get better. We need to improve. We need to be given direction so then we can figure out things for ourselves. And feedback is one tool of many that does that. So, if you're building a skill and you're helping someone to get better, then yes, feedback's important, right? If you're learning an instrument or you're learning how to drive or ride a bike, feedback is important. When you fall down and smash your knee on the ground, that's feedback, right? Something.
But you don't need that feedback.
Yeah, but I think people need standards more than they need feedback.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you give people a standard,
it's a very important point. Yes, because if you set the standard, if you hit it, if you didn't, if you went beyond it, right?
Yep.
So you can measure, let's say, maybe the success of the business or the operation or the certain product in it. So yes, the standard having standard is very important.
Exactly. People want to do the right thing. They want to succeed. They want to contribute. We just have to give them the environment to do that. And we don't do it very often because we're controlling too much. And, and we think, again, we have to know all the answers and we have to tell them what to do. That really takes these wonderful brains that you hired, it takes them out of the equation.
Yeah.
Right. It's Jim Collins calls it the genius with 1,000 helpers. We do that too much.
Yeah.
So I think if you understand that your job as a leader is to create atmosphere for people to succeed and put them in the best possible position to do that as much as is feasible, you'll have a much better company and you'll grow and it'll be a lot easier. Your life will not be as stressful. It'll actually go faster than you think, and it will be easier, but we don't do that.
Yeah. So you spoke about value earlier, right? So what do you think, or what are the 3 values in life, do you think, or in business?
So I think there are 3 things that are important to me, and I think they translate to other people as well. The first is that few things truly matter, but those that do matter tremendously. And your job as a leader, as a parent, as a friend, as a husband or wife or partner is to figure out what those few things are and do them a lot. Focus, Pareto was a pretty smart guy. Pareto was the, 80-20 guy, right? Yeah. Is that 80% of the results are due to 20% of the effort. And sometimes it's 90% of the results is 10% of the effort. It's amazing how skewed things in life are. You know, I would say, if my guess is, if you had 100 things in your closet, Hussein, you wear the same 20 things a lot more than you wear the other 80.
Actually, that's true. Yes. For example, for me, as you said, a lot, especially you feel these like 1 or 2 items or 3 items, you feel comfortable with it. You like the color, so it's easier. You know, they always fit. You know, you went to the gym, you gained a little bit of weight. You didn't go to the gym, you went slim down. So these, you know, it's comfortable. When it's comfortable for certain things, it's good sometimes.
Yep. So I think that's super important. The other is, which we've already said, which is, I think there's a meaningful gap between what science knows and what business does. And we as leaders, I mean, methods are great, and there's lots of books about how, you know, Phil Knight in Shoe Dog, you know, made Nike a really big company. There's stuff about Iger who turned around Disney, and there's a story about Alan Mulally, and there are all these great stories. But those were things that had an X factor, which was often the person involved. So it's hard to take what they did. It's hard to just replicate Google and make another Google. You just can't do it, right? So you have to, I think you should understand principles.
Microsoft couldn't replicate Google, so imagine that.
Yeah, but and then, you know, and Satya and Ballmer, you know, went in and kind of almost destroyed it. And then Satya Nadella came in and said, hang on, you know, we don't want to replicate Google. We want to, there's a space here that we can go after, right? And he said, let's be that. And he transformed the company into from know-it-alls to learn-it-alls, right? Which was really cool. So I think that's important as well. So you've got, you know, a few things truly matter, but those that do matter tremendously. Really understand the science, and science is not, so I'd like to say a survey is not a study, is not research, is not science, right? You can't say the science says because a research thing said it. That's only one data point. A science is that third parties have gone through and gotten the same results that you got doing the same thing you did. That's science, right? So we need to understand that. And then lastly, that too many leaders rely on luck, effort, will and timing to make success. And you should be relying on other things. You need to rely on leverage. You need to find ways to leverage yourself, right? And multiply yourself, and that will make your business go faster, not you working harder and trying harder and pushing harder and spending more hours.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 things that I think are I don't know what you call those values in terms of a word or two, but you know, I guess focus is one, and the humility is probably another, right? With the relying on others is really a humble act. And then, you know, I don't know what you call the science thing is, you know, maybe, I don't know what value that is, but I guess valuing science and facts, evidence-based stuff.
So what would you say one takeaway from this episode?
I don't know. What would I take away from this episode? What would I take away? What should someone take away? What will I take away from this episode? Or what should the listener take away?
From this episode? The
listener. I think the things that we just said is that you're probably working far harder than you need to if you're the leader of a business. You know, you can read my book. There are lots of books out there. You know, there are some great thinkers in the world of management science, which is leadership, which is Deming, Drucker, Shine, McGregor, Porter, Collins. These people have done research and got replicability around why companies succeed, and they have found the same things. If you can understand that and then translate that into your business, your way, you'll be in a much better position than anyone else.
Cool.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, awesome, great. So where can people get in touch with you, Bill?
My website is probably the best, which is catalystgrowthadvisors.com. My book is on there. You can actually download my book for free, or you can certainly get it off Amazon. I appreciate the $4 or $5 every time you download my book. But if you don't want to pay for it, you can certainly download it for free. My contact info is there. My calendar link is there. I've written about 130 or so blog posts over the last 4 or 5 years. Awesome. Very instructional and prescriptive. They're very short. The first few are a little long, but after you get past 6 or 7, they're 1 or 2 minute reads. And that's what I did. I listened to my audience and they said, it's really great content, but it's too long, Bill. Right? It's short, if you could shorten it up. And that's what did. My open rate is somewhere between 30 and 40% of my posts. because I listened to my readers, right? And I made them short and actionable. So that's where I would go, catalystgrowthadvisors.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bill, for being today with me on the SuccessGrid podcast.
Thank you, Hussein. Appreciate it.